Hello, it's Zeke with the Eastside Church of Christ in Baytown, Texas. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Looking Up. You know, when you're a teenager, you do some dumb stuff, don't you? I remember when I was in junior high, my friend and I, as we walked towards our English class, would kind of start jostling each other, and the jostling would get rougher and rougher until by the time we got to class, we would just tumble into the room because by then we were in full wrestle mode. And sometimes the wrestling got a little rougher than it should, and one of us would get mad at the other, and we'd fight back a little harder, really intending to hurt the other one. And I remember our English teacher just watched us. He knew that things would eventually settle down. He never said a word until the last day of school when he signed my yearbook. He wrote in it an old Isaac Asimov quote. He wrote, "Violence is the last resort of the incompetent." Now, I didn't know who Isaac Asimov was, but it didn't matter. The quote to me was profound, and I remember it even to this day. Since then, those thoughts have stayed in the back of my mind, especially when I start to lose control, when I start to lose my temper and get a little prone to acting out in a way that is decidedly ungodly. And you felt it too, I bet. When somebody zips in front of you and takes the parking space that you've been waiting patiently for. When someone acts out in a public way that is just against all the standards of common decency that you've come to respect. Or maybe when people band together and commit violence for some cause, maybe even one that they say stands for peace. You can name a dozen other instances when your blood boiled, when your anger rose, when you felt like fighting fire with fire. And I have too. And hopefully I remember the quote, "Violence is the last resort of the incompetent." But unfortunately, for far too many, violence has become the first resort of the angry, the fed up, the frustrated. But Christians are called to a more noble way of thinking that manifests itself in a higher manner of living, especially when losing control seems to be our first instinct. Thinking about my English teacher's quote, "Violence is the last resort of the incompetent." Maybe the incompetent is the one who hasn't figured out how to channel his anger and frustration into more positive, real change-bringing behavior. At the very least, it shows a complete lack of thought and a loss of control over oneself. And face it, if you can't control yourself, how can you ever hope to bring real change in someone else? Anger is a God-given emotion. I get that. But what we do with it must also be God-given, must also come from Him. So as we look up today, consider these verses from the Bible. Proverbs 29 verse 22 tells us, "An angry man stirs up strife, and a hot-tempered man abounds in transgression." But James reminds us that everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. If you're a Christian, what you want more than anything is to achieve the righteousness of God. The Bible tells us that losing our temper, losing control, won't get it. It's up to you and me to show the world a better way. Well, thanks for being with us today on another edition of Looking Up. Hope you have a good day. God bless you.